Welcome to another episode of the Social Impact Journal, the podcast where I talk to change makers that are driving social impact across the world. My name is Jack Farron and I'm your host. And this week I'm with Mathilda Strom, a social entrepreneur who has experience across the world and was a co-founder and deputy CEO of Bima, an insurtech that provided health insurance to millions of families in Africa and Asia through their mobiles. And she's now part of the founding team and the chief commercial officer of Carbon Pool, an insurtech that has recently raised the largest climate finance seed funding round in Europe in 2023 of $12 million. Mathilda, great to have you on the Social Impact Journal. I'm really looking forward to this conversation, learning about your entrepreneurial journey, some of your companies, and I'm sure your tips and advice will be very helpful for our listeners.
Thanks. It's great to be here. I'm really excited to talk to you about it.
Cool. So I think maybe let's kind of go from the start. How did your career get moving and why did you go into the social entrepreneurship space?
So I started my career in consulting because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I wanted to get a broad sense for, business and how to make businesses work. But I had grown up most of my life traveling from one country to the next because my parents were diplomats, and I'd spent a long time in China in my childhood in the 80s and the 90s. And I got the experience to sort of there see a transformation of a country over a 6-year period that was just sort of phenomenal and energizing. And when I went back there as an adult, I realized how great would it have been to be part of that journey and riding that wave and be a pioneer in the space where you can really make changes happen. And one of the things that I got to do in my consulting career was to visit Africa and actually work on several projects in Ghana and in Gabon. And I just got the same buzz and the same sort of energy from this is where things are happening and where I as an individual can have an impact on an individual level. So I was helping people with Excel skills, but I also realized if you were with mobile operators that you could make an impact on millions of people by just sort of flipping a switch. And so I just sort of felt like I need to be making a meaningful impact on the world. I think all of us feel a sense of purpose as human beings, but I think in order to go into the entrepreneurship journey, I think you need to have a risk appetite and maybe an overwhelming belief or illusion that you can make the difference and you can actually solve a problem that no one solved before. And I think that's what sort of kind of a combination of audacity and gumption just sort of threw me in to decide I wanted to disrupt some markets here.
What was it like growing up with being, having a family of diplomats? Obviously, you always said China for 6 years, but I gather you would have been in many different countries and, learning different cultures from a young age. How was that?
Yeah, it makes you adaptable. That's the number one thing that, the thing that you learn is that everything changes. Change is a constant, and there are different ways of viewing the world, and there's no one source of truth, right? So you grow up in China, and not only do people speak in a different language, but they eat differently, or they bike to work instead of drive, and then you come somewhere else, we moved to Australia afterwards, and completely different, right? And so you're everything fundamentally changes. And I think that's really helped in the entrepreneurial journey to understand that, you have to be able to adapt and you have to see that as an opportunity.
Yeah, I guess risk appetite, given the childhood you had where, you are continually seeing new ideas and things and, new cultures and you are moving. So it's actually, when it comes to that entrepreneurial journey, you're trying looking at expansion and different things. You've really experienced it personally.
Yeah. And you can see that there are ways to solve problems from all the different things that you've seen, right? So, something that may be a problem in, Austria, where we lived as well, may have been solved in a certain way already in China. And so you can take that learning and realize that there are different ways of doing things and that you can solve problems by kind of opening your mindset to that.
Yeah. So what was your first entrepreneurial venture? Was it a fully fledged company or was it a side hustle?
But the very first thing was actually trying to sell this like tissue art that I made once when I was like 7 years old in China, and I was crying with my father was there, and I was making little faces with my tissues, and he's like, "You could sell this," and I tried to sell it, and I didn't sell one. So that's probably the very first entrepreneurial journey. But let's say in a business context, it was Bima. That was the first sort of leap from a stable management consulting job into just, I'm going to do this. And that wasn't just, starting a company, but it was, I'm going to move to Tanzania. I'm going to move from London to Africa. I had a stable relationship with a man at the time, or who's now my husband. And I had to sort of say, I'm going to move. And we're going to see what happens with our relationship as well. And so there were a lot of risks I took at the time. But it felt like if I didn't do it, then I would wake up as an 80-year-old and regret it for the rest of my life.
Wow. So what was the first kind of business plan behind Bima? When you moved to Tanzania, you had a co-founder at that stage?
Yes. Yeah. So the co-founder, Gustav, I met him in Ghana when I was on a holiday there. And he had just landed from Sweden, and there was this idea that, he was working for Tigo at the time, and he said, there's no insurance for the average person here in Africa or emerging markets in general. So no one can get life insurance or health insurance. And why is that? And the key problems were really that insurance companies weren't able to take payment in small, frequent amounts. And so they weren't able to price products that were affordable, and they didn't strip down the entry requirements. And so we just realized that if you take a mobile operator lens to insurance and just say, we're going to make it like a pay-as-you-go insurance plan that you pay small and frequently when you can and top it up, and they're monthly, even a life insurance is a monthly cover, then you're probably going to be able to sell this at scale. And so that's the way that was the starting point, was there's this opportunity, everyone's using mobile, how do we bring those two worlds together? So
why Tanzania to start off this journey? Was there a particular reason or a partner? Or
So actually it started in Ghana with Tigo, but Tigo was also in Tanzania. So my first sort of move from London was to start.
So you'd already started in Ghana at that stage?
Yes. Okay. So Ghana had already started as the pilot, and then Tanzania was keen to sort of see if they could make it work. So I flew down there and just launched the business there while trying to sell it around the world. So
So just I'm really interested to see the first model in Ghana. So when you first started talking to customers about insurance, I imagine knowledge and awareness of any insurance product was quite limited. So how did you actually overcome some of those obstacles?
Yeah, you're right. There was absolutely either no understanding or awareness, or where there was a deep mistrust because big institutions are not to be trusted, and or they'd had an experience which was bad, like insurance companies don't pay, which is a common global perception, some of which is true. And the way we overcame it was you actually have to bring up, insurance is so difficult to sell because it's intangible, and it's like, give us money in the event that something should happen. And the objections we were getting were like, so what if I don't die? Or when do I get my money back? Yeah. And it's like, well, you don't. And well, if you don't die, you keep paying us. And it just felt kind of crazy. And so you have to come up with examples like a security guard or a helmet, right? And so we were like, so you pay your security guard every month. What if there's no break-in? Do you just decide you don't need a security guard next month? Or do you keep paying them because there's a peace of mind and they are doing something, right? And the same with a helmet. Would you not wear your helmet just because you haven't been in an accident? And so you've got to bring up examples like that and make it very, very tangible for them.
That's so interesting you mentioned that. That's something we experienced in Uganda. We were talking about insurance with a group of farmers, and we actually created an animated video specifically about the security guard.
Yes.
So it was
common.
If you wouldn't ask him to pay back the salary after 1 year if something didn't happen. So I think if you use those types of analogies, you can try and change the mindsets and behaviour.
Yeah.
So then, your first product launch, how did that go? And talk me through the process then in terms of expansion and how the business unfolded.
Oh, I mean, there's so much pivoting that happened from that first product. So the first product was actually a free insurance, free life insurance. That somebody needed to sign up for the product, and then they got a free insurance if they used a minimum amount of top up every month on their phones. And so at the beginning, it was like, everyone's just going to sign up for this. I mean, this is like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't you? Send out a few SMSs. Nobody really responded, and no one signed up because you can't answer some of those objections over 160 characters. So the first thing was to realize that you needed to actually go out and sell it. The technology was never going to, on its own, sell insurance to people who'd never had it before. So we actually we put agents in the branches who then started to sell the products. Then when they ran out of deal flow, if you will, they decided to go into the streets. And so then they became mobile agents. And then when we spoke with the mobile operator and we realized there was good quality and bad quality customers, i.e. people who were good users of their phones or not, we negotiated to get telephone numbers from the mobile operators that were targeted numbers so that we could actually call customers who we knew were active users of the mobile and weren't just going to churn within a month. And that created our call center model. And then, the pivots from there were very quickly. I mean, the first week in Tanzania, the CFO comes to me and he's like, we can't be doing this for free, because the mobile operator is paying us. You need to have a paid product. So immediately it was like, oh crap, we don't have a product market fit with our main customer right now, and they're always going to be arguing. So then we launched we decided to design and launch a paid model very quickly. Then we ended up realizing life insurance wasn't good enough, and we went to health insurance. Then we went to that. Then after that, people started asking us for, can I get my blood pressure checked somewhere, or can I get access to a doctor? And we realized financing in the event of a problem, was only the last part of a customer's journey, and the pain point started from access to the doctor. And so we then were like, okay, actually what people need and what is more tangible is to speak to a doctor first. And then if they direct them to the hospital, then they can get insured for it. So we put doctors in call centers, and then we had to pivot from pay-as-you-go to mobile money. So anyways, there's loads of pivots.
And this was in this period of how long from?
Oh, I mean, that's, it's constant. But probably we didn't launch our telemedicine service for 5 years. I would say we went from free to paid within a year and a half. We went from life to health again within 1 or 2 years. And then we went to telemedicine within 5 years. And then sort of the different payment models probably took 8 or 9 years. But we started them very early, the transition early.
So as all of these things were happening and unfolding as a first-time entrepreneur, what was the one element that you particularly maybe struggled with or really had to learn a lot to deal with?
I mean, everything. What can I say that might be helpful to people as well? I think what I feel like we learned the hard way was from the investor perspective. So in the early days, we had investors who were very keen on getting flags on a map. And therefore, we had targets to launch between 4 and 5 markets per year in the early days. And so we did. We ended up launching in 23 markets in total. And by the end, we were in 7. And so many of them simultaneously, we launched 7 markets in 1 year. And not all of them will succeed. And I think just being able to sort of say, wait, let's preserve cash and spend it in the right places. I don't know if I would have gone back and done something differently, knowing what I knew then, but knowing now how the market has also changed, and that suddenly it can flip to being, you don't actually have much cash, and it's not just growth. I would say have a little bit more. I would have loved to have more backbone to the investors early on, but you only build that confidence with experience, I think.
Yeah. Well, I guess in the early days, it's tough to say no. Yeah. Because you really need the initial investors on board. And then what about staff? You talked about mobile money agents, and then agents in the Tigo branches, doctors in the call center. There's a lot of different, players here. So how did you deal with a rapidly growing team? You talk about 23 markets.
Yeah.
How did you deal with that on a HR perspective?
Yeah, so we had 3,000, actually at one point 4,000 people in our teams. Most of them sales staff of some description, or 300 like doctors or health related staff. How do you deal with that? I think, and actually we had it in different countries too, right? So some countries had 500 staff and then some 1,000. We had to build management teams and leadership teams in each country. We had to give them some criteria or support in terms of what to build and how to manage from an HR perspective. But culturally, things are very different. So you also need to hire the right person and trust them to do the right by the local context, right? And so I guess that's how we did it. And, also it was remote from the beginning. So when COVID happened and people were suddenly on Zoom, I was like, this has been my life from the beginning. Okay. But building internationally, I think the hard part with that is creating a culture that is the same and actually realizing you have to be very disciplined at communication and over communicating so everyone is on the same page.
So I was thinking that, company culture on a global level is going to be so challenging with 23 markets, up to 4,000 staff. Yeah. So what were some of the strategies that you used there you talk about over communicating?
Yeah, I would say might be three things I can talk about. One is we very clearly and very early set our values. And we made them 3 values, and we didn't want to have 15. They weren't just posters on a wall. We had to sort of know that they were a description of us and not our aspiration. Okay. And we used examples to bring them to life. So we actually said, this person in Bangladesh lived this value by doing this, and then they spoke about it. And so we were able to build up and then recognize people for their values, adherence to the values in every way, and through awards and all these sorts of things and recognition. That was one. The second is who you hire as the leadership team has to already embody most of those values, right? And has to understand that that's important, because if you hire the right, let's say, CEO in each market, then it trickles down, right? So if you got that person wrong, then you kind of get everything wrong in that country. And the third thing was to try and understand which HR policies should be strict and that everyone should adhere to, and which things should be more loose. And really there was very little that was strict other than sort of values and only comp even to the first 2 layers, and then even comp could be totally flexible below that.
Wow, very interesting. So yeah, because I guess if it's so strict across, we're not talking of just neighbouring countries, but completely, different continents. Yeah. That can be something really challenging. So hiring, you talk about CEOs in the right markets. You get the right CEO, brilliant. If you get the wrong one, it's really going to trickle down the wrong message. I guess it took you a while to really find the right recipe in terms of, how to hire the right person and those stages. Definitely when you're starting a small business, you can definitely make some mistakes with hiring.
Yes, and different. The business, like with any business, it needs different styles at different times of its journey. So, if you're hiring someone to start the business from scratch, which we did, then you need somebody very entrepreneurial who can take every single hat and who can actually build it and problem solve on all small levels. Whereas if you're hiring someone who's already needing to manage a 1,000-person team, regulator who's difficult and a big stakeholder, you need slightly different skill sets. And so that was sort of the thing you needed to realize. I think the thing that I learned early, because maybe we were a bit brutal with our hiring in the beginning. I mean, we had IQ tests, and you had to have a very high IQ score to even get through, because you needed to be able to be very quick on your feet with problem solving. And it turned out that was correct for the very early days, I would say. But later on, the emotional quotient, the EQ, became actually much more important, and you could fill in the gaps where somebody maybe didn't have the commercial acumen with a really good CFO or something like that. So you found ways to build around strengths and weaknesses.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I get what you mean, because hiring the wrong person, in a brand new market where maybe you don't have the experience in that particular place, can be quite disastrous. So if we look at kind of the numbers, of Bima, how many paying customers or people did you actually get to insure?
So now we're insuring around 5.5 million who are paying on a 30-day basis.
Wow.
There was a kind of competition in the early days between us and one other player around how many customers you had registered. And if we look at how many we registered from the start across all markets, like 150 million people. Which is huge. And you think about that as an education program, i.e. they've all learned about insurance and at some stage decided they would try it. It's amazing. Many of them churned because they churned from the mobile operator that they were buying from and not because they churned from the insurance. And many of them just haven't been able to pay because they didn't top up their phone or they didn't top up their mobile money account. And so the paying customers is also a reflection of the quality of the payment channel. That's the key thing in, I would say, in emerging markets, right? That is the determinant of a successful business or not.
Right, okay. So 5.5 million are still paying, and that's in 7 markets. You talked of launching in a lot of different markets, but the 7 were the 7 that you really decided that you could scale in. Which countries are those?
So Ghana, Tanzania, that's in Africa, and then Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Cambodia, and India.
Okay.
India was a pilot, actually, so small. So I would say 6.
Yeah. So when was that transition from Ghana, Tanzania, your first 2 markets, to then focusing more in Asia? When did that happen?
Bangladesh was our first Asian market, and that was within a year and a half of launching the business. So we went out to Asia pretty quick, and then from Bangladesh went to Sri Lanka, Indonesia, and then Pakistan. And then Latin America, which, as I said, we exited all of Latin America at one stage. It was just too much.
Understood. So what would you think, looking back at your time with Bima, would be, that one day where maybe you finished work, closed the laptop and said, this is a massive win, or something you really look back on? Was it something in the earlier days, or maybe a huge contract, as you were growing?
I would say for me, the biggest win was getting the contract with the partner in Bangladesh, the mobile operator, because that was really the determinant of whether we had a sustainable long-term business that people would invest in. And we got that, about 10 days before the deadline that we'd been given. And so it was a huge win. But within businesses, you tend to not celebrate the wins as much, maybe as the founder, because you realize that the work starts the next day and not getting the deal. But now we've got to make good by this. So I don't think I celebrated enough at the time. But now I still remember signing that deal.
Nice. And for the markets that didn't work, what were some of the key challenges that you found? Was that regulatory challenges, just distribution challenges, or?
They were payment channel was the main challenge. So the mobile operator themselves started to struggle with certain things, or changed the way that they were selling their top-ups, or there wasn't enough mobile money growth or enough quality in the mobile money adoption that, as we thought. Like, we were in Uganda actually and trying with mobile money, but it turned out there wasn't at that time enough quality to really make it profitable. And at the end, it turned into, therefore, cost problems, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on from Bima and towards Carbon Pool. So I know you've been there for over a year now.
No, a couple of months, so 5-6 months.
5-6 months. Okay, so you're part of the founding team and the chief commercial officer. So what do you do at Carbon Pool?
So Carbon Pool is going to be the world's first licensed insurance company that will be able to underwrite carbon credits with carbon credits. And what does that mean? So today, we are emitting lots of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. We need to remove it from the atmosphere. And companies are increasingly, from a regulatory perspective and from a customer perspective, trying to meet requirements to get to what's called net zero. So what you're emitting, you're also removing, so that you're having a zero impact on the planet from a carbon dioxide perspective. And so a lot of companies are investing in projects that are sucking carbon dioxide out of the air, and they're banking those as credits to make themselves whole. The problem is that most of those projects are fraught with risks, and they won't deliver the number of credits that you expect, or they might have, once they've delivered them, something could happen and the carbon dioxide is re-released into the atmosphere. There's been a huge number of projects that have had lots of problems reputationally because of this. So there's not a huge amount of investment right now going into the space as much as there needs to be. It needs like 10x. And mostly that's because of the risks that people see and the risks to actually getting their carbon outcome.
Right, okay.
And so having an insurance company that can say, we can help you guarantee your carbon outcome in 10 years' time, if you invest in this project now, is like what everyone in the world needs, And when we speak to some of the biggest investors, Microsoft, Salesforce, they're investing hundreds of millions in these projects. When we say you can now be 100% sure that you will get the credits that you need, they're like, where have you been all our lives? So this is pretty incredible.
So that's who you're targeting, the people that are investing in those projects?
Yes, exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, a lot of them, 90% or more are nature-based projects right now, meaning you're planting trees or something like that. And of course, there's a million and one things that can go wrong. And, climate change is creating even more risks to that. So that's what we're doing. And what I'm doing there is obviously then going out and speaking to as many customers as I can and understanding what products do they need and how do we create a product market fit here so that we are selling what they're buying.
Yeah. So talk to me in practice of what the I know you're building the products right now, but what that might look like for a company that is thinking about investing in a project and then they come to you. What exactly is that product going to look like?
Yeah, there's 2 or 3 products that we have right now that are already sort of packaged to be sold. One is called our carbon shortfall insurance, and that's for people investing in projects that are delivering carbon credits over a period of time. And that would be a 5-year insurance cover that says over that 5-year period, you're expecting to have 100,000 credits delivered over each year, and that's 500,000 then for the 5-year period. If for some reason, or ideally, or for like a natural catastrophe reason or something like that, or a failure to grow, those trees, for example, don't suck that much carbon out of the air and you only get 400,000 credits out of that investment, we will make you whole by the other 100,000.
But not with cash, but with carbon
credits. Exactly. With credits, So with credits, that means we're having to invest in our own projects.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Where are your credits coming from? Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually right now probably the most difficult part of this equation.
Who's insuring your project?
We're having to build in buffers because we're doing all the same risk assessments that we would be doing for our clients, but saying, okay, so these are the least risky projects. We'll put them on our books so that we make sure that we're confident in those. And then we're having to build a buffer because some of the things like political risk that we're not covering right now. Our projects will be subject to political risk and we'll have to buffer for that. And the reason having a license is, in this instance, a really good thing, which for most insurtechs, they're like, stay away from the regulatory part as long as you can. In this case, the solvency requirements that you have and that especially a new kind of concept like this is going to be subject to just means that there's that much more certainty that we're going to be able to deliver on our promise.
Yeah. So I read you raised $12 million just a few months ago in your pre-revenue, which is
outrageous, isn't it?
In this market,
yeah.
Quite frank. So it's quite an exciting, couple of years ahead for you and the Carbon Pool team. Mm-hmm. So you're based in Switzerland as a company, and I know a lot of your co-founders are ex-Allianz. Mm-hmm. So it's mainly an insurance-focused founding team.
That's right, and I think that's why we have so much confidence from the investor landscape, because if anyone's going to make this happen, it's people who understand how insurance works and the mathematics around risks, and understand how to deal with the regulators to get the licensing required for this, that are actually going to make this happen. And I think from that perspective, it's sort of I understand why. And also having been inside and talked to buyers, I mean, I've never had so much inbound requests from the most desirable partners ever. And, even the other day, someone sort of called, we have a list, the top sort of 10 potential buyers would be clients that could potentially be 10, 20, $50 million revenues on their own for us from premiums. And they're called the low-hanging fruit because they obviously need this product. And so I'm just trying to paint the picture of why this is maybe so obvious and why the team that we have is really the only team that's going to be able to make this complexity work. And that constantly, our CEO Conrad is like, he loves doing the math problems on this because everything is a probability and statistical assessment. And you need that in order to make this actually work.
Well, good luck for the next few years. I think we'll be following closely.
Yeah,
It's
no, thank
exciting
you.
times. So it's been a really fascinating episode for me. And one thing I want to maybe ask a few more questions on is building a global business, being a co-founder. You've talked of all of the places you've worked around the world. There's travel, there's a lot of stress and commitment there. How do you balance that with your own personal health and well-being in that journey?
It's a great question, and I don't always.
Yeah.
So things are difficult at times, I would say. But what I've found now, and I'm in a place of real calm about it, is that you have to be deliberate and disciplined about what it is that matters to you, and that you carve out time for that, and what helps you, what generates energy for you. What gives you energy versus what sucks energy. And, I really believe there's something I saw once that said, as an adult, you have to balance, family, friends, exercise, hobbies, community, work. And it's like, but pick 3. Because you can only really feel like you are getting the most energy out of it if you can do 3 of those. And so for me, that's, making sure that I prioritize family when I'm home, exercise, and work. Because work is, I'm spending so much time there, I have to enjoy it and find it fun. Sure. But I also, I switch off by reading like poetry and more literature that is, which I didn't used to. I was all into business books, and then I realized, what, the way to sort of switch out, and then mindfulness and all these things, they're all really important. So it's sort of finding time for this, and unless someone once told me, it's like making time for it. You've got to just make time to carve out for it.
Yeah, no, I'm trying at the moment to try and like block out parts of the day for exercise, but then sometimes, it doesn't work.
Early morning, you got to get up earlier, and then you can get it done.
Yeah, I think so. You said you're training for a marathon.
Yes, I am. I'm training for the London Marathon at the end of April. So I've did a half marathon this weekend, got a 15-mile run.
Nice. An official or just...
half marathon, I did an official one last week just to get it.
Where?
Around here, actually, at the Olympic Stadium.
Oh, okay, nice.
So we just ran around lots of loops around that.
Oh, cool.
Which was great. I actually did much better than I thought I would. So I enjoy it because it means I'm running 4 times a week and doing strength training 2 times a week. And anyways, I'm not going to be a proponent of like get up at 5 a.m. It's the only way to be successful. But I enjoy having a goal and working towards it. And I'm a person who likes, let's say, who likes not having routine, know? And so sticking to something 100% of the time is just not me. But like having a principle, like exercising a couple times a week is really important.
Yeah, I think I might have to learn from you on that.
And traveling, I have a couple of tips. So if you travel long distances, then exercising when you arrive to the place is really valuable. Fasting when you're traveling, and then eating in terms of time zone, your biological clock is more easily readjusted when your digestive system is adjusted to that time zone. So if you wait to eat until the next sort of breakfast, lunch, or dinner time in the new time zone, then you'll start to more easily adjust your...
Oh, okay. So exercise when you arrive, and then wait for the on the local time zone.
Yeah, on the local time zone, exactly. And then if you fast on the trip, you feel so much better.
Right. Okay. Cool. Thanks. So, last question, a question I asked to all of my guests.
Yeah.
If you had your own social impact journal and you could write one page for a young social entrepreneur, let's say coming out of university or college, that is thinking of building their own business, what one page, one paragraph would you share with them to take on their journey?
Firstly, I would probably say find a co-founder who complements your skills, who you really like, and who you can have hard debates with. That's been extremely helpful and takes the weight off. That's probably one. The second is not to give up, to just think about each challenge as an opportunity. It sounds really ridiculous, but it is an opportunity to pivot and to learn, and not to get defensive, but to be like, how do I make something out of this? So those would be my 2 tips.
Mathilda, thanks so much for being on the show and being on this week's Social Impact Journal.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks. Thank you for watching this week's episode. If you did enjoy it, please share with your colleagues or friends. We are becoming more and more active on our TikTok channel, so you can find us there at the Social Impact Journal, and see us next Monday at 9 a.m. GMT for our next episode.